Missouri Firearms Coalition. It's always an honor to be joined by Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey talking about Joe Biden's war on our freedom, the Second Amendment, and everything in between. He is our guest today. Mr. AG, thank you for your time today.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on and covering these really important issues.
So the big question for all of our members, and they're super excited now, we actually have a court date. February 16 is the head-to-head showdown with your office and gun owners against Joe Biden, the DOJ, over SAPA law. Why do you think this is such a big deal for the Biden White House?
Well, Aaron, this is monumental, and I think it's important to remember a couple of things here. Number one, SAPA is about defending and protecting our Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. That right comes from God, not man. The Constitution exists to protect us from the government, and the government exists to protect our rights. But SAPA also codifies the 10th Amendment non-commandeering doctrine, which essentially stands for the proposition that the federal government is not allowed to come in and commandeer the apparatus of state government to achieve its goals. And really all we've done in SAPA is codify and assert that basic doctrine from the 10th Amendment, and the Department of Justice sued the state of Missouri. They are the aggressors here.
Yes.
Biden's Department of Justice are the ones that can't allow that to happen. They want to commandeer the apparatus of state government to take away our right to keep and bear arms. That's what they're committed to. And that's why defending the Second Amendment Preservation Act is so critical. Obviously,
I think a lot of people initially thought this is all about guns, but your point and all of our point has been this is about much more than the Second Amendment. It's about the idea of state sovereignty. SAPA applies it to our gun rights, but it's about a lot more than just the Second Amendment.
That's exactly right. The Second Amendment is a good hill to die on, and I'll die on that hill every day. But I'll tell you that this is critical across a spectrum of issues. We see it in all sorts of different areas where, for instance, the Biden administration is trying to use the school and reduced lunch program to force a radical transgender ideology, or trying to use the Department of Energy to tell you which appliances you can and can't have in your house. So if we give an inch on any of these issues, the Biden administration will completely take over and will be using the power of the executive agencies to run every aspect of our life. The Second Amendment is just where we've chosen to take a stand and the hill to die on.
It's Missouri after all, so it's always going to come down to the Second Amendment here in Missouri. You know, one of our lawyers told me this, and I was going to ask you this question as well. He said, you know, it's not normal to have a lawsuit like this named United States versus State of Missouri. I'm not a lawyer, but does that name mean something to you and to your team?
Well, we wear it as a badge of honor.
Yeah, exactly.
The Department of Justice is so incensed at the concept of freedom here in Missouri that they would attack the state of Missouri. And think about this for a minute. It's an attack on our gun owners and any law-abiding citizen in the state of Missouri, but it's also an attack on our General Assembly who passed the statute. It's an attack on our governor who signed the law. And by God, the Missouri Attorney General's office, as long as I'm here, is going to stand up and defend it with everything we've got.
I'm going to ask you about the actual oral arguments and some of your thoughts on that in a few moments. But one question keeps coming up. Several months ago, when SAPA was allowed to expire, when the stay from the lower court expired, you asked the Supreme Court of the United States to extend SAPA during this appellate process. SCOTUS declined that. And of course, as you know, the national media and media here in Missouri went wild saying that the Supreme Court has struck down Missouri's SAPA law. My question to you is, was that a merits-based opinion from the Supreme Court, or was it something else? And if not, what was that?
No, it is absolutely not a merits-based decision. And the media is so quick to pile on and try to give Joe Biden a win here. They're the enemies of freedom. And so, of course, they're going to spin the story. This is an administrative stay. That's all it is. All they're saying is pencils down until the court gets a chance to look at it. That's not the court opining on the merits of the case. We're going to have our day in the court, and we anticipate a good outcome at the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. And if we don't get one, we'll take it all the way to the highest court in the land. But we are going to win this case and protect not only Missourians' right to keep and bear arms, but also the sovereignty of the state of Missouri.
Absolutely. So what we keep hearing from the DOJ is this is a supremacy clause violation. So for those who are new to this issue, the short version of SAPA is it simply says that Joe Biden cannot use our cops, our agencies, our state resources to enforce federal gun control laws. And so, of course, we're limiting what Missouri can do. We're not limiting what the feds can do. We're not telling Joe Biden that he can't use his manpower here in Missouri. As a layman, that's how we see it. Do you agree with that? Is there a supremacy clause violation here? What's your response to the DOJ on this?
Yeah, the supremacy clause is a red herring. That's the Department of Justice wants to be the supreme law of the land. That's the problem.
Yes.
They think the supremacy clause means they get to do whatever they want. And that is not true under our constitutional structure under our democratic republic and a system of federalism where the states retain sovereignty. The Supremacy Clause merely stands for the proposition that where there's a conflict between state law and federal law, and the federal law is validly enacted, then the federal law prevails. But that's not what we have here. Again, the anti-commandeering doctrine is codified not only in case law from the United States Supreme Court, but now in statute in the state of Missouri. And there's nothing illegal or violative of the Supremacy Clause when it comes to the anti-commandeering doctrine, or the Supreme Court certainly would not have engineered that doctrine in its decisions from previous years.
So we kind of thought back in 21 when we passed all of this that SAPA law here in Missouri would be a roadmap for red states across the country on a whole host of issues, as we've already talked about. When I see the list of amicus briefs filed against Missouri's SAPA law, I was verifying that our amicus brief got filed in time. And I saw Everytown for Gun Safety, Moms Demand Action, Giffords Law Center, March for Our Lives, all these different entities. Is it pretty obvious to you two? This is about much more than just Missouri now. We're talking about the vehicle, or certainly a vehicle, to help keep red states free from this White House. Is that how you see this fight playing out as well?
Absolutely. And the fight is critical now more than ever as we see the Biden administration and its army of unelected federal bureaucrats slouching towards authoritarianism and undermining the rule of law. This is a stand worth making now. I'm so proud that Missouri has blazed a trail into battle for others to follow. And the fact that you've got every gun-grabbing anti-freedom group in America out to get us means we're doing the right things for the right reasons.
100%. You already answered this question once, I think, a minute ago. I'm going to ask you one last time. Final question on SAPA. Safe to say whichever side loses in the 8th, this case is going to be appealed at some point to the Supreme Court?
Well, that's certainly true if we lose, but we don't plan on losing. I anticipate that the Department of Justice is not going to want to take a loss and is not going to let the case go. Again, they are invested. Yeah. They're invested in taking away our freedoms. That's why they sued the state of Missouri.
Right. Final question. You're not going to want to answer it. I know that, but I have to ask you anyway. Timeline on a response. I know you guys will never give a hard date. I get that. What do you think? What's your best guess on a timeline on the response from the 8th Circuit? Any way to guess?
You know, it is so hard to tell. We argued a case in January of 2023, and it took until January of 2024 for us to get a decision. That is definitely on the outside. You know, I anticipate 6 months. Okay. 8 months at the most. But, you know, we're in front of a 3-judge panel at the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. And before you jump to the United States Supreme Court, there is one more shot that could be fired at the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals, and that's for the court to ask for a rehearing en banc. And that could happen even if we win, but maybe the court, we lose on one issue but win on 9 others. And so it's a 90% victory. Maybe we still would want the court en banc to relook that. So there's a procedural mechanism that could potentially keep the case at the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals longer. My best guess, 6 to 8 months. 6 to 8 months. Well, Mr. Attorney General, thank you for your time. You're very busy. I appreciate your time here today. Our members appreciate getting the information directly from you. And thanks for your efforts to defend SAPA here in Missouri. Thanks, Aaron. Let's go get them.